Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by an exceptionally talented principal recruiter who, beyond her full-time commitment to her present employer, is the driving force behind TA Crunch Berlin, an inclusive space for the TA community to exchange knowledge and learn. With a decade of experience in recruitment, she's lent her expertise to multinational teams, including Zalando and Wayfair, and her dedication to advancing the careers of individual contributors in the recruitment field is truly inspiring. I am genuinely excited for this opportunity to delve into her insights and expand my own knowledge and the understandings that we're going to take away from this episode. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and please join me in welcoming today's guest, the principal recruiter with the team at Thermondo, Andreea. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. I could have just stayed here and listened to that introduction for 20 more minutes. Loved it. Thank you.
I had to short it down. You have a lot to go through. Your career is, like I said, genuinely one that I'm super excited about. And there is so much, obviously, that you share online that I could have picked out so much more. So I had to use good old ChatGPT to try and shorten that down. It was a lot longer beforehand. But like I said, I do appreciate you jumping on. So before we get into the core topic of what we want to go through today, I do like to have like a little, let's call it like a tester, shall we say, of what we've got coming up. So the easiest thing to kind of get into this process is for yourself. Sorry, what is the biggest struggle you believe talent acquisition teams are facing today? And then from there, obviously, if you do want to allude to what we're going to be talking about, if you think it is the biggest struggle, you can. But if you think it's something different, then I'm curious about that.
You know, I wish I would have done my homework properly. Well, the biggest struggle, apart from the obvious, ridiculous amount of layoffs,
Yeah.
I think, apart from that, is that individuals sometimes, and by individuals, I don't mean the talent acquisition partners themselves, I mean genuinely in the industries in general, there is a misconception about what talent acquisition actually is and can and should be, and it is still somehow limited to an operational recruitment, candidate in, candidate out kind of function. And I think it's really a tough battle that we have to go through.
I think that kind of comes into a little bit about what the roles inside talent acquisition are as well, which is obviously the topic of today. And you know, principal recruiter yourself, I know it's something that you're extremely passionate about, and understand what that role truly is and how it should actually operate inside the TA function. So I've got an idea of what I think it is, but we're not here to listen to me. So from your own words, what is the true role of what a principal recruiter is?
It's a good segue because it's part of that complicated ecosystem we live in, that the conception of talent acquisition is faulty, if you ask me. A principal recruiter, for me, or maybe it also describes a little bit what I do or what I've been doing for the past 4 years plus, I don't know, just as a principal, is the right-hand person to your head of TA in larger teams. And it's the individual who drives, executes the larger strategic topics. And apart from the execution, so literally having always a foot on the ground, and the other one sits comfortably in the leadership topics. And leadership in this context, what I mean by leadership in this context is influencing at a senior management level across the organization, building up, so upskilling the entire talent acquisition department of an organization, regardless of the domain they are hiring for. And obviously we have the process improvement and the project management. So they need to be able to juggle with all of these at once and still be performant as an end-to-end operational recruiter.
So it's taking on a lot of operational activities while still actually hiring as a recruiter.
Yes. So I think what I've noticed sometimes when you look at, sadly, the inflated titles that appear here and there in organizations is they name someone a principal, but the individual actually, and it happened to me in my previous organization too. Some of my colleagues in the States, they were having this player coach role. So they were managing 2-3 people at the same time. They were trying to recruit at the same time. They were trying to lead projects. So it's a bit like I'm sorry, no offense against the brand, but it's a bit like a Hyundai, right? We have a car, we have a washing machine, we have a I don't know, like a vacuum cleaner. It's good, but is it really good? Or would I rather have a car that does a car, you know? So also be mindful of how much you load them. But I think that the reality, so touching the ground and being in contact with candidates and the market is essential for the role to be successful for the organization, because this contact with the ground allows us to be able to inform the organization, allows us and to inform maybe at a higher level than potentially a senior recruiter would do sometimes.
And that was actually my next question, is how is this going to differ from that senior position? Because I'll be honest with you, running a quick search into Berlin, for example, there's not a huge amount of principal recruiters on the internal side. There is principal recruiters on the external side. And I think that role is like natural. You go from senior, then maybe they create like a lead role, then a principal. For us as an external, side, it is more just is the most senior recruiter in that organization generally. So there is a difference in how you would see it versus how I would see that title, I guess. So when someone might be sitting there thinking, hang about, I do that role, but I'm a senior, or someone else might be thinking, actually, we might be able to create this role. If someone's listening and they're kind of that lead or that head of talent. So what is kind of the key difference?
Yeah, I will answer the question, but ahead of that, I want to just share some really wholesome conversations I had, and I'm so proud and grateful of having them. So there were 3 so far. 2 companies, really big, reached out to me to speak to me about, hey, we are thinking about this. We have some people in the company who seem to be on that path. Talk to us, or talk to the people themselves and help them understand whether or not this is what they want to actually be doing. And then also talk to us to understand whether or not we should be looking at building such a career step in our talent acquisition career framework. The conversations were really good and inspiring for me as well. And the third conversation was with an individual who was recently promoted to the role. And it was supposed to be just like, hey, I've just been promoted to this role. Is this really the role? And it is really the role, but it is very true what you said. So I'm coming back to what you were mentioning. It's super saddening for me to observe that companies inflate titles. And sometimes you will see principal recruiters with 3-4 years of experience. And arguably you might say years of experience do not count. Sadly, they do. Other times you see principal recruiters, as you well identified. It was also my research, right? In consulting organizations such as yours, you have a principal. It's a different environment, right? Internally, when we look at internal talent acquisition teams, probably the most obvious difference in terms of what makes a senior versus what makes a principal is how wide we spread our wings and how wide our impact is on an organization. So we can literally have impact beyond the domain that we might be normally dealing with. You might be a senior recruiter doing tech recruitment, like I have been for a really long time. And then your scope expands, while again, I need to touch on this again and again, you don't lose touch with the ground. So the fact that you get on 3 company-wide sometimes projects, like I had one at Zalando, we redesigned the entire product management, job family, and interviewing practices. And we are talking over 500 people in product management. So, and for a company, tech-driven company like Zalando, that is a massive thing. So I had that project. I had 3 other projects on the go at the same time, hiring at the same time. So you touch upon such a wide variety of topics, and you must be able to drive impact. So it's not sufficient that you dip your toes in a couple of topics, but you have to drive impact. You have to have your KPIs in place, your success metrics in place, and achieve them in a rather limited amount of time. That is one of the biggest differences. Another one is how you grow the people around you. So there is this, everybody says this, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But it is quite true, because you want to bring people up with you. And while the leadership is sometimes, luckily, exceptional at that, not always, but sometimes we have exceptional leaders in place, luckily. The discrepancy I notice between them understanding what's in the market and what's inside, this is where we fill that gap. And this is why when we upskill senior recruiters to principals or junior to middle and so on and so forth, we upskill them on, I really dislike the term hard skills, but on the capabilities that allow them to be performant and to be advisors and to be what a talent acquisition partner should really be, a partner. So it's a bit of the way I observed it in my role so far, it's a bit of a different approach to upskilling.
I mean, you've got the real world examples there because you're doing them with the team. And I think thinking back to my own experience, and if I take COVID as the example, this was before Peritus. So, we're trying to get through quite a muddy situation as an external organization. It's never been done. So, we were going through something that was never happened, right? And you're trying to just get through this murky situation, and you've got people who maybe aren't on the tools saying, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? Do this. You're like, but it's what you think isn't reality at the moment, and I guess your role is kind of keeping that reality and letting the leadership team know that I am aware of where we're going, and then using that knowledge to kind of upskill. You say it's a different mentality of upskilling, because I guess respect, I think I'm going to put that word in there. I imagine you'd get more respect from the TA teams for being still very much hands-on, and they can see you being hands-on from that, and they probably buy into you a bit more.
Yes. I'm really happy you mentioned, I think, respect, but also it's a tough one, because I have to lead without having any authority. So sometimes I think this is also one of the toughest parts of the job itself, and that leading doesn't refer to only the business side, so the business stakeholder management piece, but leading the team themselves. They look at me like a peer, because I am a peer. And sometimes if I want to drive projects, or if I have to, for example, implement processes or drive change, again, remember I was saying that a principal sits close to the head of TA more often, right? And they drive really big change management processes sometimes. And then they look at you and you're like, who are you? Fair enough. So that's why it is important that they are actually working together and they are not like a separate kind of entity. But yes, you are correct on the respect, because you still understand what needs to be done to be able to fill a pipeline. You still understand, you are still touching on, and maybe this is why I've been quite successful, because I've never lost touch with what's out there, keeping myself up to date, trying to understand, to learn. I'm also super hungry as a person for learning, which is just my luck. So bringing all of that in, right, to individuals who maybe otherwise are just burying themselves into the operational day-to-day, that's when you kind of start to get a bit of respect or a bit of appreciation. But it's such a fine line between raised eyebrows and who are you to tell me anything or to try and teach me anything, and oh God, I'm so happy that you do, because I don't have time or I don't know where to look, and I'm grateful that you just hand these to me on a platter.
We're going to touch on, I guess, a little bit about how we can help drive change in a moment. But before we do, why do you feel that there has been this misconception about what the principal role is inside a TA team for all this time?
I will shoot myself in the foot massively with this one. First, I honestly do believe or understand now more than I understood before. I did these interviews and I haven't stopped doing them. Whenever I have the opportunity to speak with a C-level or VP or director of talent acquisition in larger organizations or smaller organizations, I try to interview them a little bit to understand what is their perception or understanding of the role. And originally I am still very passionate about it. You need one. So shooting myself in the foot, I would say, first and foremost, not every organization needs one. So you might be doing just fine with someone who is leading the team, and you have 3 mid-level recruiters. That's all you need. You just go through the motions, right? Maybe your organization is not quite there yet. Other times, the leadership, again, this is this discrepancy, right? They evolve in a way, but they lose touch completely with what's happening and what is in talent acquisition, what's new, what's cooking, right? Skills-based hiring, it's a big thing right now. And I'm still hearing senior leaders in talent acquisition not only ignoring it completely, I mean, ignoring it is one thing, but being completely oblivious and continuing down the same path they were maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago. So they don't keep up with times. And this is one of the reasons that I believe this happened. Another thing is we don't often try to get inspiration from other business domains. The principal role is, I think, originated in engineering. And if you look at the job description for a principal engineer and a principal recruiter, but you change the domains they operate in, they are
much the same.
Yeah, more or less identical. So, but we fail sometimes, sadly, to understand that we can draw inspiration from other business domains who are much more forward-thinking, innovative, faster, and they are seen as revenue providers for a company, whereas TA is still often seen as only a cost center. Maybe that's our fault a little bit.
I was about to say, where do you think that's driven from? Because I think you're probably right. Probably from us and I say us because I do still believe wholeheartedly that internal, external, it doesn't matter. We're all talent acquisition, right? Have a different flavor of it, shall we say. But I think you're absolutely right. You know, the whole movement of service provider to business partner that we're kind of trying to move through, we could have done this 3, 4 years ago. COVID is a prime example of being able to do that because we were looked to as like the people who held the key, because we were the ones on the phones with candidates, understand where the market is. That was the prime example to make that shift. We just couldn't do it on that, I would say. So do you think it is down to us really to kind of push forward with and kind of help drive this kind of change?
I think in a big part, yes. It can't be only on us. And what I mean by us in this particular instance is us as the operational individuals. So I'm not talking about the leadership. That's what I mean by us in this particular sense. So I think it must be done together. We definitely, I believe we should bring to the attention of the organization what the value is, the value that we deliver, what it is, how it actually translates in relation to the business vision, mission, strategy. When you have these company discussions or you participate in all hands or what's or not, and by the way, we should all participate. I don't know there is a camera. I really need to make this super clear that there is, in my opinion, there is no excuse as a talent partner. If you want to be in the know, you need to be a really close to your business. You really need to understand your business. Once you do that, you need to be able to understand what am I doing that is helping the business go where it needs to go. And then the next step is for us to we understand, and then we are able to highlight that and bring it up in discussions. Now, I've been there myself, and I hit my head against the glass ceiling at Zalando until my head was pounding, right? A reason why I left. Because you land on deaf ears. Sometimes it is what it is. Now, other times you keep bringing this up and bringing this up. I will maybe come up with some examples in a minute, but this is so it's managing up. At the same time, let's be realistic. Oftentimes we will be faced with an absolute ignorance from the leadership. They can't do it, or they don't want to do it, or they don't know how to do it. Not all the leaders are leaders because of their absolutely exceptional visionary, let's say, performance and inspiring leadership. Sometimes people are leaders because they've been pushed in leadership or because it is what it is. They've been there the longest.
Yeah, fine.
So that's one. And then it must be the other way around too, right? So the C-level, the organization should, and now I'm also looking at the VPs of talent or VPs of, or CHROs, look at the talent acquisition organization, and really I would ask them, is it really only a cost center? Are you really forgetting all the cost that we actually save your organization when we take care that the quality of the people we hire is top notch, so that you don't have attrition?
Yeah.
So there are many things that go in there. So if they would look at this department with different lenses, and maybe they would be the ones driving an understanding in the wider board or C-level meetings. Hey, this is what we actually do in talent. This is what this department can do. And these people need a position to flourish. How many leads, like team leads, do you need in talent acquisition? Honestly, at some point you will need someone to be able to lead a bit more of and I'm not meaning people leading, right? More of a strategic approach, more of an talent acquisition excellence side of things. So we just grow them to a piece, and then we push them to leadership, and then we push them to leadership. Is this really?
You see it so often.
Yes.
From both sides of the fence,
yes.
You see it so often. Someone's performing well, and they're like, "Cool, you can have a team."
Yes.
And it's like, okay, now you've got two people, and then all of a sudden, you're no longer recruiting. You're leading people and coaching them, and they've lost such a valuable resource in what you're capable of doing because you did well. It happens so often.
Yeah, you get pushed into leadership. Questionable. Are you getting any support? Are you getting any training? And more importantly, do you want to do it? That's my story. Push me into leadership. I don't want to. So then you lose me. Yeah. And I lose you. I don't want to lose you, but what can I do? So this top down is absolutely crucial.
I think there's also this weird understanding that if you don't strive for leading people or running your own company or whatnot, then there's something wrong with you.
Oh,
right?
Yes.
Like you have to always be pushing more. You always have to be having the best time. It's like, no, you could be happy just doing what you're doing.
Yes.
And you get paid better because you are better than other people at doing it. And that's totally fine as well. I think the sooner we get rid of that idea of like the hustle culture and like always having to be on all the time and improving every year, then the better we can all just have a better work-life balance and find jobs that we want to work in and are happy in. And I know happy is such an arbitrary word, but that is true, right?
And it's essential.
Yeah.
I want to just mention something there because you touched on something which is really close to my heart, and this is this not the hustle culture, but this perceived obsession with titles and my role is so pompous and da. So I want to make it quite clear that the individuals, for example, and it's the same in engineering, who push themselves on a principal route, it's not that your role is stagnant. This horizontal growth is tremendous, and it is so entertaining, to be honest, and so rewarding as well. There is this concept: you have a star employee and you have rock employees, and you need them both, because if everyone wants to be a shooting star, then you will end up with a sky full of comets at some point. So it's quite true. You need the rocks.
I like that a lot. I might have to borrow that analogy, and then I'll credit you. Don't worry, but I'll borrow the analogy. It leads really nicely on actually, because, and I didn't even plan this part, so thanks for the segue into the next part. So I'm curious because someone might be sitting here listening, going, "This sounds either like what I'm doing today, or this sounds like what I want to be doing," and you've got me. I'm excited, right? So tell me, I guess, some of the ways that as a principal recruiter we can help drive change, either in the TA function or across the wider business. I know you've alluded to a couple of examples that you've been part of already, so we can delve into them. But I'm curious on two parts. One, that went well, and maybe things where it didn't go well, and kind of what are the learns that we can take from that as well? Because this is stepping out of, I see, just recruiting day in, day out, territory. This is going into project-based,
Yes.
things into different parts of the business. So I want to kind of give people somewhat of an idea of what they could expect, I guess.
Mm. Yeah, happy to share examples from my experience so far, but I want to highlight something. You mentioned development in the TA or in, it's not or, it's and. So you need to do them both. You can't do
I
them.
was referring more to what examples you want to choose, but
Yeah.
good,
And the
fair
examples,
point.
I think they will also be quite a bit of both. I think so if you are someone right now who is thinking, hold on a minute, I'm doing projects, I am hiring, I am teaching my more junior colleagues, I'm mentoring them. Question number one, do you measure the success of your activities? Question number zero, sorry, I should have started there. Do you track them, the activities? Do you have an understanding at any moment in time, if your lead sits you down now, can you pull out this is what I'm doing? And this is what I'm doing needs to be an absolute puzzle of things, different things. So one, you need to ask yourself this one thing. So this is one thing I think I've done really quite well. Again, I'm lucky because I am like that. I need to document things. I am quite organized. And this is something that helped me tremendously because then I started to understand, hold on a minute, I'm doing all these things. First of all, nobody knows about them, or they are too scattered. I'm mentoring someone in my team. I'll take an example from Wayfair. At Wayfair, we didn't have a mentoring program when I joined. And I was mentoring people left, right, and center, just ad hoc,
Yeah.
Hey, do you mind this? Hey, do you mind that? Ta, 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 ta. Did anyone know? They knew, I knew. That's it. Then we started looking into developing this mentoring program, right? And I wanted to be involved because I was like, I know what these people are asking for, right? And maybe
Yeah.
how we can, me as a mentor, what I need as well, and what I need to be able to provide them with. So how do these things need to be structured? So whatever you do, people need to know about. At Zalando, it was more or less the same. One of the things I've done before I left, I was working with a specific business domain. And what I mean is I was kind of like delegated. I had a business domain with around 250 people. Go and sort it out a bit. Obviously, you depend on the global organization with processes. You have the coordination team, you have the EB team, and so on and so forth. So I was always like in between. But ultimately, they were like my little company. So what I failed miserably at was I went so much into that and I did a lot of things for the business, interviewing programs, interviewing training. I was doing projects with them for increasing diversity. I built their community, engineering community, inside the business and outside of the business. I built with them, I don't know how many candidate experience packages, offer packages. Great. They were super successful. I was super successful in what I was delivering. Did anyone in talent acquisition know? No, because I was so much in that. So that's why I said it's not a or, it's an and it's essential. This was one of my biggest mistakes, honestly. So whatever you do, if you do projects, if you do process work, you need to make sure that it's visible, both ends. So when I moved to Wayfair, I learned my lesson. And whatever I was doing with the business, I always brought it to TA, always, to all of TA, not only tech. So I said,
How, if you don't mind me
yeah,
asking, how can you do it in such a way where it doesn't come across as, hey, look at me, I'm
yeah,
doing something again, I'm so great. Like,
yes,
let's just all look at me. Because
yeah,
as you're talking, right, that will be my fear.
oh,
That people look
100%.
and go, for God's sake, she's done another project.
Yes,
What are we
yes,
listening about now? I mean,
yes.
in a nice way, but also probably
No, it
not.
was not nice. It happened very often. One thing I want to highlight, sometimes you will have people like that in the team, no matter how you present it or how you don't present it. There will always be like, oh my God. It's like, fair enough. At some point, you
Yeah.
will get it that they are just like that and you can't do anything about it. It will hurt and you just have to go through it. Other than that, what I did at Wayfair, for example, one of the first things I've done, I did a massive workshop with the engineering leadership team. It was really massive, but we built a business case behind it. So it had really nice documentation for before, We had documentation when we did it, and we had documentation after. So then what I did, I was like, hey, I asked the management, is it okay if we maybe present this to the wider team? Maybe there is somebody else who struggles, like we struggled in leadership in engineering, and they can take some learnings from this. So that was one way. Another way was when you hear somebody chatting about or complaining about, oh my God, this is so and so and so complicated. I'm like, hey, I heard you talking about that. You know, a couple of months ago, I had a similar struggle. I just wanted to share some stuff I've done. Maybe you've done them as well. But look, I've done these things. Would you like to talk about it? Maybe you can implement some things that would help you out as well. Sometimes they would have thought about it. Sometimes they would have even done something. So maybe you can add little value. Other times they might be like, holy cow. Yeah. I didn't think about that.
Pin drop moment.
Yeah. And other times, for example, I notice it maybe even now, and I'm the same. Sometimes you think you know stuff, but you don't. Yeah. So then, as a principal, you kind of look, and sometimes you like, I know you will hit a wall. I've been there. I hit the same wall 50 times before. So what I'm trying to do now, for example, when I work with sometimes with individuals who are much more junior, not the fault of their own, right? Everybody has to start somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah. You go and hold their hand and you ask them, how do you want to approach this? Why? And let them hit the wall.
100%.
Yeah. And then you're there holding their hand. It's fine. You hit the wall. What did you learn from it? Okay, what are we doing next? And then you help them build up. I know we sidetracked from the original question, but I think this is also important. Let them hit the wall.
Well, I mean, that's coaching from the principal recruitment side, because I think coaching and leading is two entirely different things. And yes, a leader can coach, but going back to that original point, you're there on the ground with them.
Yes.
And I guarantee if you asked somebody in the team who they rather be coached by, you know, yourself as a principal or me as a manager, they're going to be going, obviously the principal who's doing the job, who I can see being successful in that job. They're going to gravitate more towards you for coaching perspective. So I'm kind of taking from the project's perspective that you have had the opportunity to work on. They vary completely.
Oh yes.
And you know, you could be having one big project, multiple projects. They could be training, they could be process, you know, change management. And whether these projects are typically driven by, you know, are you trying to find issues within the organization that you can adjust and going, I'm going to get my teeth stuck into that? Or are they saying, we've got this, you know, where is it? I know that it could come from both sides, but where is it typically from your experience?
This would be a rather personal thing, because for me, mostly, I would say 80% came from that doesn't work. We need a better solution. And the way I approached this in the past was completely different than the way I approach it today. Because in the past, I'm like, there's a problem. I'm going to try a solution. I will see if it works. If it doesn't work, I will change it until it works. And then that's it. We just put it in. My way of trying to get buy-in from individuals around me, and that was TA, that was my lead, that was business, was completely not existent. I didn't know how to do that. Nobody taught me, right? So I hit my head against the wall a number of times. But back to your question, yeah, it was me trying to figure something out. For example, now I've started a couple of weeks ago, and what I've been doing from every conversation I've been having, literally every coffee chats, it doesn't matter. I would ask the individuals, hey, if there is something, I don't know, 1, 2 things that you noticed with talent acquisition that you would like to be done differently or better in your opinion, what would that be? And then I gathered a list of stuff. It's called Andrea's observations, really. And then I sat down and I put those observations, I tried to map them out based on, what is this? This looks like, for example, operational excellence, but even more capacity planning, right? Or how do we get more effective, recruitment effectiveness? This looks more like employer branding, this most whatever. So I try to map them against that. And then you look at that, you look at the company, where does the company want to go? And you think, okay, if I would like, in the past, it would have been like, what's the coolest thing I can do here? That looks cool. I'll just do that.
Go to
Now,
the bit that you want to do.
yes. Now I'm like, yeah, that's super cool. I would love to do that. But actually, the company where we're going needs that. My department, so that's layer one. Layer two, my department has these OKRs. So what from this list of 25 things that I imagine could be better, what will actually move the needle?
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest that individuals who want to progress, that you have this critical thinking, right? And you look around and you observe places where you can make incremental changes or where you can make a really big difference. Understanding how to prioritize them, understanding the prioritization needs to be in line with the company goals, with financial goals, and with the departmental goals is essential. I didn't know that until late. And when I learned how to do this, it helped tremendously, right? Because then when you present something you do, or you try to get buy-in from people, it's a different ballgame altogether.
And say, for example, you've done this work, but you don't get buy-in from the senior management specifically. Is there any, I guess, guidelines or things that we can do to kind of help in that situation?
Are you talking about after you've built your, I would like to do these things?
Yeah. So you're in a position now where either you've got the title of principal, but probably not in this instance. Actually, let's say no in this instance, because if you've probably got the title, there's a good chance you've got the buy-in from the upper management. But you're a senior in the organization and you feel like this is the path you want to be taking. So you do this sort of stuff, but you're hitting blockers from upper management specifically. They're just not understanding that that's your job or that's the job that you want to be holding within inside the organization. They just cannot get their head wrapped around it. How can we either help them understand, or what would you prescribe as the actions that we could take?
Yeah. Let me leave the bad news at the end. To start on a positive note, so let's say you've done all of this, right? You've mapped them, and you can have a conversation with your lead about, hey, if we do this, this is what I need. Very limited resources, very limited budget. This is how it aligns with the company goals. This is how it will positively impact the talent acquisition department. Let's say we have that nailed, right? And you got it. It's written down. And you go to your lead and they say, yeah, I can't give you these resources, or it doesn't make any sense. Sometimes, sorry to say, but sometimes the leaders we have are just not there yet, right? They are not visionary enough. They are not open-minded. They don't want to drive improvements. Sometimes it is what it is. But let's say they say no. You can do some of the following things, I would say. One is say, fair enough, I understand it's not a priority for you right now. What is? What are some of the things you work on right now? And see what they give you, maybe 2-3 things. And I would like to involve myself and support the company and support the department in getting better, getting faster, getting whatever. How can I do that? So this is not a priority. I understand what is. How can I get involved? You might still get a no. I mean, that becomes questionable after that. Another thing you can do is if they say no, you look at your colleagues and you start, it's like dripping information here and there. This is a bit of a manipulative tactic, but if you go and ask people, right, it's like when you try to organize a coup, you ask people, hey, how do you feel about this tool that we are using? Does it work for you? How do you use it? And then you start getting complaints there, document them all. You say, 3 months later, hey, you know that thing I was talking about with you? I know you said you have no capacity, business priority. I just gathered this feedback from 10 people. It seems like it's a real hindrance. Would you want to consider it now? And sometimes it may happen that these people that you've discussed with, and it's not like, oh my God, don't you hate that too? It's not like that, right? You just ask them how they feel about it. And maybe you say,
I can see it can come across like that if done in the wrong way.
Yes. So
but you're
it's
doing
like,
it from a constructive feedback.
yes,
capacity.
constructive. And also you can also share, right? So I shared, for example, hey, I thought, for example, this for me doesn't work. And what I thought of doing is ABC. How do you deal with this? And sometimes it was like, holy you know what, I hate that. It doesn't work for me. Yeah, you know what you said makes a lot of sense. Some other times they go like, nah, for me it's just fine. But
Yeah.
those people who will say, oh yeah, you know that idea you shared, it's really cool, I would do that. But they won't go and do it, right? But what they might do is in another conversation, drop it in and
To the
say,
person that needs to hear it.
yes. And they drop it in once. So it's like word of mouth a little bit.
Yeah.
It's literally like, it sounds terrible, but like building a coup. You keep dripping this, right? And then you get this agitation in a positive manner. I've been accused before, I have to say, in at Zalando, that I agitated the spirits in a negative manner because of things like this. And that that was heartbreaking for me, because I only wanted to do good. Did I know how to approach it? Probably not the best way. But now I know, looking back, that it was not, it was a me problem 30%, but it was a different problem 70%, right? So learned my lesson. That can happen. Brace yourself, it can happen, right? And then there is the business. Let's not forget the business. If your leadership doesn't understand and doesn't give you the support, and you go to the business side, and again, you drip feed information, or you ask them questions that are in alignment with some of the things you want to do, they might become your advocates. They might be the ones that behind closed doors in senior leadership meetings say, when they complain about how rubbish recruitment is, there might be the one who says, "Huh? But you know, someone in that I work with told me that we could do that. Why aren't we doing that?" And all of a sudden, poof, it becomes a priority.
Yeah. So it's about working out how to, and it's good that you've made the mistakes, so we can learn from your mistakes. It's
Many.
good for us. It's about finding the project, giving the business case for it. We get kickback, no. Okay, so then coming back, what's the priority? Can I be involved? No. And then it's about biding your time, but whilst biding your time, understanding, is there anything else from research, not creating a coup, but from research, and then then seeing how that can be brought up organically.
Yes, yes. And then that's in your department, and you can also go outside of your department. I had this as a success story. I think it was also at Wayfair, where I was trying to push for change in our processes, in our hiring processes for the engineering management job family. And I was getting so much resistance from TA. But then when the business comes and says, no, we want to actually do what she's suggesting because for us it works.
Magically, it happens.
Magic, yes. So that's the part of influence. And you don't get influence by going and batting your eyelashes or by putting a fist on the table. It's by building the relationships, it's by giving people stuff without them asking you for it, right? So giving. And this I'm talking primarily for the business side, but not only. Giving. And then when you will need something, then it's easier to ask for it, right?
Yeah.
Or sometimes you don't even need to ask for it.
So what's the bad? That's the good. What's the bad?
Yeah, the bad is that sometimes we might really want to expand. We might really have a problem-solving mindset. We might be really good at understanding these are the problems, this is how we break them down, these are the risks if we do them, if we solve it, if we don't solve it. So we might be fantastic at all of that. And the leadership might not just be there, or it may just not be a priority for them. Dependent on how much time you want to spend going through these motions, that's up to you. I'm having a conversation with a brilliant talent partner from a big corporate. He's facing exactly this at the moment. Banging his head against the wall, has brilliant ideas. No way.
Can't
no
get them
chance.
out.
And at some point, the bad news is that at some point it will be a decision for you to make.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? And is as sad but as simple as that.
No, and I appreciate the honesty with it as well, because I think a lot of the time people want to move in their careers, but you might love the company, the team, but if it's not giving you the career path that you actually want, and I'm so pleased that you've spoken about being a principal recruiter, by the way, because it's such a topic that's just not shared enough.
Yeah.
And when you talk about, people being pushed into leadership roles and things like that, fortunately, I actually enjoyed it, but I was at that time as well. And I think had I not been, I probably would be on the same path as you. But I see myself now, I lead one person because we're only quite a small company, but I see myself more as that principal recruiter with project-based ideas anyways. But there's so many people I think just look in TA path as, okay, well, I can then go and lead a team as a manager, then I'm a head of, and then, that's the path that's set because that's the path that they know. Whereas you're coming in and carving out and saying, no, actually, have a look over here. It's fun.
Yeah.
Like, you'll enjoy it. And if
It's
you're a
very
critical
enjoyable.
thinker, you're a problem solver, you can work on all these different things
Yes.
and have influence. So I really do appreciate you spending some time. We'll leave it on that point. And obviously, if people do want to find you, join your community and kind of reach out, then I'll put all your socials when we post this as well. But thank you so much for taking the time and sharing us through your honest examples as well. Not
Thank
leaving
you.
things out from it. So yeah, appreciate that.
Thanks for the platform. I'm really grateful. Whenever I do get a platform, I can talk hours about it and in much more detail and in a, let's say, in a very diverse manner, because I think I really do believe that TA should wake up and allow us to diversify our career tracks instead of pushing people down this leadership path over and over and over again, and understand that you maybe don't need a full talent intelligence department. Maybe you don't need a full even talent development. Your principals could do that, or your principal. You can have one, right? So it's such a beautiful and complex role, and people following this path are usually also, I believe, very passionate about what they do. That's why they don't necessarily want to leave the ground. So use that passion.
You'll get the drive and the buzz from hiring people.
Harness that passion. Use that passion in your company, right? I think so many leaders are really, they're losing for not utilizing that fire.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Nice. Thanks for the talk.